Great stuff. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this collaborative forum organised by the UCC Planning Society in conjunction with the Heritage Council and the CTHC programme. My name is Kieran Deneen and I'm a second-year planning student in the UCC Centre for Planning, Education and Research. I just want to say from the start that this webinar is being recorded and will subsequently be shared via the UCC Planning Society social media accounts. If there are attendees who would like to receive the recording, please don't hesitate to email us at planning@uccsocieties.ie. We are here today to discuss a really important topic in the context of planning for our town centres, and that is how can we help to integrate digitalisation into planning in order to improve public awareness and participation with the aim of leading to a society that is better for all. It's fantastic to see so many people tuning in today for this discussion around the digital transformation of our historic town centres. And we have some fantastic guest speakers lined up who will bring their own knowledge and expertise to the table over the next couple of hours. Unfortunately, I'm sad to say that Rory Hearn won't be able to attend this session due to a very recent family bereavement, and we extend our sympathies to him and his family at this difficult time. However, we are sure to have some really interesting discussions with our three speakers today, who are Diane Rennie, Sarah Sherlock, and Owen Costello. As you can see in the schedule that I'm sharing, we are going to hear from the three speakers between now and about 3:10. We will then take a quick 5-minute break, which will be followed by around 35 minutes of a Q&A. I would ask that if you do have a question, please don't put up your hand. Instead, use the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. Later on, towards the very end of the webinar, when Alison Harvey here is going to ask everyone to get a little involved, and I'll open the chat box and hopefully we can see some discussion flying in then. Before we go any further, I just want to say a massive thank you to my classmate and fellow second-year MPlan student Cathal O'Regan, as well as recent MPlan graduates Gemma Glenn and Warren Carroll for helping me to put on this webinar for you today. We'll all be floating around this afternoon on camera or in the background as the discussion goes on. We could also not be here today without the help and support of the Heritage Council, the Collaborative Town Centre Health Check Programme, or CTCHC, set up by the fantastic Alison Harvey, who I want to introduce now to kickstart off this webinar. Ali is a Programmes Manager with a background in planning and economics, and she has 22 years experience of running collaborative regeneration programmes in Ireland and the UK. Ali set up the CTHC programme in 2016, which is included in Ireland's programme for government, and has over 70 partners and 15 member towns involved. There's a substantial waiting list of towns wanting to join the programme, such has been its success. And Ali also coordinated the podcast series linked with the programme, which launched in November 2020. Ali, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Kieran. Lovely introduction and great to be here. So, okay, so basically just welcome everyone to this first ever Young Planners Forum, where we're going to focus on the digital transformation of historic town centres. We're just blown away by the numbers of people who've turned up today, so thank you for your support. It's really good. And just to say, I suppose we all know that we've reconnected with localities and place during the lockdown, which has been quite long at this stage. I think I'm kind of feeling it, you know. So this webinar, really what we're trying to do, we're trying to tap into and harness the growing public awareness and the need for a strong sense of place, and also a strong sense of belonging in how we live and how we work and play. So as Kieran quite rightly said, today's webinar is part of the Heritage Council's Collaborative Town Centre Health Check programme, which is part of Ireland's programme for government. So we have 15 towns and we have a huge waiting list. So, you know, we really do need resources under the programme for government. We have 3 excellent speakers today, and I'd really like to thank them in advance for their time and also for their goodwill. You've been fabulous so far, so we're really looking forward to your all your talks. So many thanks to the wonderful team at UCC's Planning Society for all their hard work and putting this webinar together. Well done, lads and lassies. And so that really just say thank you very much. And over to Cathal, who's going to start us off with the first session. Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Alison. I'd just like to introduce our first speaker, who is Diane Rennie, and just a quick, brief introduction. So Diane is a senior leader and program director with 15 years experience in digital transformation across the financial and public sectors. Diane was part of the senior leadership team which established Tesco Bank before moving into the public sector. She then led the collaboration between local authorities and Scottish Government to deliver the development programme as a foundation for the digital transformation of the planning system in Scotland. Together with Liz Pringle, Diane has led the team behind the successful publication of Scotland's digital strategy for planning and the launch of the digital planning transformation programme. And I'd just like to hand it off to Diane now.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for the introduction. And thank you for the invitation to come and speak today. Really appreciate it. We'll tell you a little bit about what Scottish Government are doing. I am going to apologise in advance for everyone who knows that I have an 8-month-old puppy who's quite barky in the background, so apologies if she takes over for a second. I am on my own in an open plan apartment with her, so bear with me, please. Thank you. Let's hope she's good. So I'll just move on to the first slide then, and I'll tell you a little bit of a background as to how we got here, probably helpful. We have launched our digital strategy, which I'm going to tell you a little bit more about, just in November 2020, but I guess it's just want to make it clear that that wasn't the start of the journey. This has been happening for a very long time, and it has taken a long time to get things in motion. So really, this goes back to 2009, maybe slightly before actually, but we launched the 2009 e-planning portal in Scotland, which was unique because what we've done is create a partnership between ourselves and the local authorities. So working in partnership within Scottish Government, and we led that procurement activity and that build and delivery on behalf of the 32 local authorities and the two park authorities as well. So all 34 planning authorities. So that's been quite a unique and quite interesting arrangement, and has been the basis for being able to move forward at relative pace with our digital transformation. There was an independent review of planning that happened, and that was published sort of late 2016. And we then established, one of the recommendations was that we should explore the innovative use of data and technology in the planning system. So we established a ministerial task force in 2017, and then that's when the work really started to begin and work in informing and defining what would that strategy be. It's all very well to look at tools, but actually what problems were we going to solve with those tools? We actually managed to use some of those tools as we pivoted during COVID to try and help actually support the Scottish Government in some of their decision making using place-based tools, which was quite an interesting use actually, which helped us to see that we were on the right path. So we published our strategy in November 2020, which I'll tell you a little bit about, together with a budget commitment of 35 million, which is the funding that we've got for the next 5 years to deliver this digital programme. As anyone knows, the amount of work to try and secure that in the background did involve a very robust business case, which we will continue to manage through the next 5 years. We did launch our programme on March 2021, so it's quite exciting. So we have now officially started our 5-year delivery of this transformation. So I'll try and tell you a little bit in 15 minutes or so of what that should deliver. So our next slide, that's all right, thank you. So this is our vision. Our vision is for Scotland to have a world-leading digital planning system that helps connect people with their places and to deliver a prosperous, greener and fair country. And in Scotland, the unique opportunity we have is really through this partnership that we have with local authorities. That is quite a unique thing, and that experience that we've got from e-planning and those relationships we've built allows us to all work in collaboration. So the digital strategy for planning outlines how we will use technology and data to make best use of our resources. And then that will result in a high-performing planning system that will bring significant national level benefits to Scotland. In shaping the strategy, it became clear, as I'm sure you can all imagine, that digital transformation is not about data and technology in itself. It is equally about people, how people use that data and technology. It's about the culture that we create, and it's about how we all work together. So taking this into account, we identified 5 key missions that together will transform and have an impact on planning. So the 5 of those is, which they're quite small on here, so sorry, could have probably done with making that slightly bigger, so I'll read that to you. So mission 1 is data. So we want to unlock the value of planning data. I'll tell you a bit more about that as well. Mission 2 is digital technology. So we want to deliver an end-to-end digital planning experience. Mission 3 is our ways of working. So let's create the conditions for digital to flourish. Number 4, mission 4 is about people. We want to use digital tools to drive collaboration and engagement. So how can we use them? And mission 5 is innovation. We want to embed a culture of digital innovation. We certainly don't want to get to the end of a 5-year programme and have to start another one because there was all this new technology that came along that we weren't looking at. So we want it to be an innovative system that goes forward. So let me tell you a little bit more in our next slide about data. So we want to use data to drive decision making. So unlocking the value of data will give people, well, we want it to give people the confidence that they have the right developments that are being planned in the right places with the right infrastructure. So whether you're a local authority, a particular community that has a concern, or a community group that has a common aim, or you're a commercial business making investment decisions, you want to be sure that you can use trusted data effectively to support evidence-based decision-making. If all parties are dealing with the same data, actually there's less ambiguity, isn't there? It makes decisions easier, it increases that transparency, and it also allows our communities to feel much more empowered, help them to see and make those decisions along with us. A data-driven approach to policy making and guidance also allows planning to move from being form document driven to being driven by rules and standards and that data. So using data to reduce and automate repetitive tasks, for example, will free up resource and help focus planners' times on where the professional experience adds most value. We've done some prototyping work already using real data sets and presented this information geospatially to visually represent the impact of planning and other wider policy decisions on a particular community or an area. And this is the technology that we used effectively during COVID to support decision making regarding safe travel and location of vaccine centres during COVID-19. Okay, so the next slide, thank you, is how do you start transforming a whole sector digitally? Because it's massive. So it's the whole sector. We're not talking just about a few processes, are we? So what we did, and that is, it did take 3 years to write the strategy because we really did want to get this right. So we started off by understanding our users, so user research, speaking to over 1,000 people, well over that now actually, to get a clear understanding of the issues, the experiences and opportunities from various different perspectives. We then actually looked at what technologies on the horizon, not just in planning actually, so what technologies out there that other sectors are using that could be pivoted to look at, that we could use in a planning context. So looked at the existing and emerging technologies, some of the trends that are coming along, and also then how would we possibly apply them into the planning system and how would they work? Our user research and the findings of the horizon scanning were based on a series of what we called how might we challenges. I'm sure people have come across that before. But actually, this helped us to work with those who are in the planning system to really explore some of the solutions that we might find and then to design them, so potentially design them and start creating some prototypes. So we have some working prototypes now, which definitely help in the communication aspect. When you're trying to transform a whole sector, it's really hard for people to really understand, like, what do we mean? What will it look like? Is it just a better version of what we've got? So I'm not going to share any of them with you in the 15 minutes or 20 minutes we've got today, but you can find more information on those prototypes on our website. And we looked at things like applying for planning permission, commenting on applications, assessing applications, finding and viewing sites, and producing plans. And all of those came up with quite interesting solutions that we certainly wouldn't have got to on our own. Okay, so the next slide then is how do you transition to a fully digital enabled planning system? Actually, what will it look like? So as outlined by the ministerial forward of the strategy, a transformation this ambitious would require collaboration across the planning sector and beyond it, really, to shape and implement new systems and new ways of working. I think it's probably safe to say at this point that the transformation, like innovation, is not a destination. Actually, it's not something that we will do for 5 years, produce something nice at the end and deliver it with a finished shiny product. What we're doing really is building a system where we bring people together to look at how data and technology could improve our ways of working. So it's going to be an ongoing process, and it'll be embedding that process as we go forward. We want to stay open to new ideas, new ways of doing things, and new ways of delivering public services, keeping the users at the heart of those changes. So the delivery of each new service will begin with a period of discovery, asking the right people the right questions, and then we'll start to prototype and deliver against these sort of iteratively to make sure that we have working systems that can be used quickly and we don't have to wait 5 years for the benefit. Okay, so slide 7, thanks. So what will you actually get in the planning system? What will this actually mean? So to sum it up in one sentence, it will be a planning system fit for the future that gives planners the tools and data that they need to collaborate and improve decision making. So what that will give us, shared data resource. So if we look at decisions that we're making in our place, actually it'll be place-based decision making that we're really focusing on here. Not by policy area, but actually bringing all of those policy areas together to look at our place with all of the data available to make good decisions and to be able to visualize the impact that we will have on those areas. We also want a planning gateway hub. What do we mean by that? Actually, what we mean is we'll have one big place that all things built environment will be. So if you want to find somewhere to build a house, actually you should be able to look here. If you want to find a piece of land, actually you want to know what's happening in your area. Actually, you could have a feed that tells you what's happening, what consultations you can get involved in, where they're happening, how, at what stage it's at. So that all will be in this Planning Scotland gateway. Might not be called that actually, so that's not a definite, that's our prototype name for just now. We also want to have digital tools and apps. So things like Place Builder, this is something that we have already produced and are in the process of licensing with a company called Future Fox. And that is a collaborative tool that's online that allows communities to get together and actually discuss the area and feed in how they want their area to look and feel, what's important to them. So real collaborative digital tools. And a Place Tech Innovation Lab. That's to make sure that we don't lose sight of emerging technology. So that's what the planning sector see. I guess that I think everyone would realise that that's all the front-facing elements. To produce that in the background, what we need is modern technology, cloud-based and flexible solutions. We need consistency in the processing. We need to look at digital skills for planners, machine-readable policy and guidance, and a culture that supports digital ways of working. And key is trusted data managed through state standards and governance, which is what we're working towards. Okay, so next slide. So a digitally enabled planning system, what will that actually give us as a nation, really? But it'll provide easy access to standardized data for development planning. And the real benefit here is allowing for more integration between development planning and development management, actually bringing those links together, giving planners an intuitive way of seeing and taking account of development planning policy when assessing applications, and where decisions are made through the application process, they can be relayed back into development plan policy in real time, used to track progress towards policy outcomes. So this really does help align policies, plans and outcomes across national, regional, local and community level. And number 9, so a streamlined, efficient planning application process. This is a big key one for us. So although it's one thing, it's one of the first things we're going to start with, is really making sure that we get incremental improvements straight away. That's mainly for the planning authorities. There will be an overhead initially, won't there, as we try and implement digital change. So what we have to do is free up some resource initially to allow them the space to be able to implement the changes that we're going to need over the 5 years. So actually, by bringing in a single payment system, actually is one of the first things we're going to do. An improved application status notification. Can we stop people phoning all the time? Actually, can we be sending out that information? And cloud document storage, giving us a single source of truth, will be some of those incremental improvements that we'll make straight away. And then we really get to an end-to-end smart planning application service. I mean, right now we live in a world, aren't we, where we can instantly check the news, the weather, order goods and services. We get delivery updates actually on our parcels. We can access voice assistants like Alexa. There's a valid expectation that we should be able to access and engage with public services, including the planning system, with the same level of ease. So the public sector really needs to services really to urgently meet and surpass these expectations of our digital services. And this is sort of our core way of sort of testing out how we might do this through the application process. And then I'll move on to, this is the last one you'll hear me talking to today, but this is the point about creating the conditions. So it's all very well providing all of these digital tools, but collaboration and partnership is going to be the key for the industry, for academia, public sector partners to deliver change together. So we develop consistent and coordinated business processes. We're currently working with RTPI and a company called ECOS to identify the digital skills landscape, defining a digital skills and capability programme that will include digital leadership, digital skills for public sector planners, and work jointly with academia to ensure graduates have key digital skills on joining the profession. And then our last one that we definitely don't want to lose sight of is it's not all about digital. We want to make sure that we value non-digital interactions, and we recognise that digital should support good judgment in planning and help people make decisions, but it doesn't take away that decision making. And there will be individuals who don't want to deal digitally with the planning system, but actually we need to make sure that those handoffs between non-digital and digital are seamless so that everyone can interact and have a say in their area and how their area is shaped certainly across Scotland. And our final slide, as that was a very whistle-stop tour of our 3 years of strategy building, is that you can find more information on our website, or you can contact me certainly for any more information. And that is me for today, and not one bark, so thank you.
That was great. Thank you so much, Dan. I really enjoyed it. I particularly love the kind of moment of standardized access to public services with kind of ease of Alexa and tracking. I feel it will really bring the planning system forward in great leaps and bounds. I'd like to introduce our next speaker now, Sarah Sherlock. And Sarah Sherlock is a geospatial consultant with Murphy Geospatial. She's passionate about our towns and villages and has studied their importance for many years. She has a postgraduate qualification in urban and building conservation and an advanced diploma in planning and environmental law. Her observations come both as a professional geomatics surveyor and as someone who has grown up and lived in a beautiful vernacular village all of her life. She has studied and observed such villages firsthand and understands the invaluable contribution by Irish towns and villages to both our nation and its citizens. So with that, I'd just like to let Sarah take away and everyone else to enjoy.
When I was trying to choose my heading for today, just everything is connected. So let's plan it. And I think that's fair to say. A little bit about me. I'm a geomatic surveyor. I work for a company called Murphy Geospatial. It's a firm of land surveyors in existence since 1983, which has grown to have offices in Ireland and the UK and beyond. It captures, collates and verifies spatial data above, on and below the ground. Some of the surveys that we provide on a daily basis are tank scanning, control networks, topographics, heritage and conservation, setting out, flood mapping, underground utility and mapping, LiDAR and measured building surveys. I myself specialise in boundary surveys and legal mapping. So that's when properties would be transacting either for sale, lease, purchase. I would verify the boundaries for those transactions. So as a result of my job, I would get to very much have my finger on the pulse on a daily basis as to what's happening. So why am I here today? Well, I guess it's because of all that I said to you previously and the fact that I adore our countryside and our stunning towns and villages. Is there anywhere nicer or more beautiful? To be honest, I don't think so. I'm also here to speak to you about some of the issues as I see them and speak to you about some of the other things that you may not be on your radar, but they're still worth knowing. And I guess they feed into everything that Diane and Owen are going to say as well, because we're all talking about places and spaces. Here we have an example of a real world, and what we're always trying to do is relate our real world to our digital equivalent. And, you know, that's not ideal. It's difficult, and it's difficult on many levels, because you have to think about the national level, then you have to think about the smaller levels down to the individual project levels. So when we're talking about spatial data, what are we talking about? You know, the fact is many people perceive our world very differently, depending on what it is that you do on a daily basis or how it is you do it. So what one person may expect from a digital equivalent might not be the same as what the next person expects or needs, okay? This is an example of a fire plan. So fire officers might constantly deal with these, you know, they're general, they're quite detailed for fire escapes and stuff. This is a standard blueprint out of any planning book that you will find for house designs, bungalow lists, or any of those. This is an example just of an urban study. This is a conceptual design. Sometimes I'd argue some of these might get built. And then this is a nice little garden plan. Every one of them are some kind of a plan, there's some kind of a drawing. And, you know, we all expect them to be able to relate to the places that we're using them and understanding them. And that's not always going to be easy. So what I would say to you is all measurements, maps, drawings, and all of that, they're not all suitable for the same purposes. We have to be careful. Here we have an example of aerial photography being acquired, possibly for national mapping or the likes, because it's from a fixed wing airplane. Here we have an example of a LiDAR data set. This is an individual disto, which you could pick up in Woodies possibly or anywhere like that. And here we have a detailed scanner. We have, this is the BLK scanner, which would be used for indoors and things, a drone. And this is an example of a project that we're involved in where a design was actualized and built in Trim. It's the OPWHQ. And when we scanned it and did a BIM of it, you know, it turned out pretty well. It compared to the plans and the intentions at that particular time. So, you know, we all have to take different things from it. And what matters is how they all go together and work together and function together and help us do our jobs. These two words, digital and data, you know, every time I hear them used together, I freeze sometimes, and I do think, you know, they're regularly conflated. They both need systems to operate and function so they serve properly and efficiently. Data can have many forms, and digital data that has a location in it is a very different beast to data that doesn't have a location in it. They need to be treated separately and differently, because otherwise we will end up with places and spaces maybe not where they should be. They won't speak to each other ubiquitously, and they create all kinds of difficulties. If you put garbage into a digital system, the result will be a digital system spitting out garbage. So we have to be careful how we put our information into our digital systems. So we have our surveys here, the kind of surveys that we as land surveyors or geomatic surveyors would do. And then the CTCHC program tries to accentuate that data and bring it in, build it up, such as census surveys that they would do, footfalls, land use, all of those other various surveys. And ideally then they would sit in some kind of a GIS, and then you would have data where it would consider good standards, good practices, national policies, infrastructure, collaboration. The whole idea here is to create integrated data that's harmonized and standardized, that we can do decisions, diffusion and analysis on afterwards to achieve better outcomes. And ideally, we should all be thinking about the Sustainable Development Goals, because that's something that we all have to realize. The Earth is finite and the resources are finite. So we have to make better use of what we have. So given that I'm a land surveyor or a geomatic surveyor, the solution in my eyes is a single source of geospatial truth. And what is that? Well, that is a hub where all of our spatial information can come together, sit together and work together. But how that would function at a national level and how that would function at a town level are probably quite different. You know, I don't know, it's not something that we're doing here at the moment. The CTCHC program is looking to do it. On a national level, the Ordnance Survey has created a portal called GeoHive, and it's absolutely exceptional. It has some wonderful information in there, and it's been bolstered by new spatial information all of the time. An example is the EPA environmental mapping that's now sitting on it. There's lots of good information in there, you know, and that's at a national level. But then if we're to look into and drill down and use it for our towns, for people to communicate and talk about their places and their spaces and what they want to do, it's important that whatever they do feeds into and considers what we're doing on a national basis, because otherwise we're going to have a disconnect. So what do we need to ask ourselves every time we look at our places and spaces and when we want to create them again? I would say we need to look at the purpose of the information that we have. You know, are we looking at mapping a large city? You know, what level of detail are we going down to? Or are we looking at developing a section of the Dublin Docklands, for example? I don't know. Or are we looking at individual houses? You know, we have to be conscious of this. Always remember the purpose that the initial data set was captured for, because it might be very different to what you need to use it for or can use it for. Measurement, again, I believe measurement underpins many, many things. And of course it does. It's something there that is a key pillar to the facts, the data, the information, knowledge. It underpins how we observe, sample, compare, how we focus, how we understand things, the problems that we want to solve, you know. So there's different types of measurement, you know, and we need to be conscious of that. The measurement that I'm talking about today is measurement of places and spaces, the physical land that we're talking about. And from a professional perspective, the survey detail accuracy band is one method of trying to create consistency amongst these spatial data sets when we're talking about engineering, planning, master planning, BIM, you know, for modeling, or topographical surveys or hydrographic. You know, they all have different expectations and limitations that you should be able to use them for. So what is measurement? Well, it's the act or the process of finding the size, quantity, or degree of something according to the Oxford English Dictionary. But what I want to bring our attention to is more what do we mean by it when we're talking about planning? So essentially, I'm going back to the mere definition of the unit of length, okay? So that's underpinned in the Council Directive almost some 40 something years ago. And then just last year, the SI number 154 of 2020, the European Community Units of Measurement Amendment Regulations, these regulations come into effect on the 13th of June. And they said that the unit of length is the meter, the symbol is M, and that it's defined. So therefore, measurement shouldn't fluctuate for us. We have to be careful what it is that we're looking at and be sure that we're working to this standard at all times. Where does that then transpose further down? Well, if you look into the Planning and Development Act, Article 22 and 23 talk about our plans and particulars, okay, required for the planning application. And it provides that plans, drawings, and maps accompanying a planning application must at all times be in metric scale, which speaks to the previous slide. Site or layout plans must be drawn to a scale which shall be indicated thereon of not less than 1:500 or other such scale as may be agreed with the planning authority prior to the submission of the application. Then it goes into other things such as roads, boundaries, and what you have to bring in, right? But in summary, what we're saying is a site location plan needs to be at a scale of 1:1000. That's broad scale national topographic mapping, which is perfect. That has its limitations, but it also has its strengths because it means you can map the whole of the country. You have good data about it. Our national mapping data set goes back I think 1833 is the first mapping that we have. So it's extremely consistent data set going back a number of years. Then our site layout plans are at 1:500. So that, if you can just imagine, that's like dropping in the magnifying glass a little bit more. You can see more detail. So you'd be expecting to pick up things that like which plus or minus 100 millimeters. That's the level of accuracy you'd be kind of looking at. And then the other plans, elevations, and sections you're looking at in planning drawings are at a scale of 1:200. So you're dropping the magnifying glass a little bit more to get that finer detail, to see what way the boundaries are treated, you know, all of that. And what I need you to understand is that if you don't capture the information at this scale to begin with for your planning, right, you're probably going to end up where you don't have the information that you would like to see, because it doesn't exist. Just because you have a drawing in CAD and you zoom into that scale, it doesn't mean that you have the detail that you require at that scale. If it wasn't surveyed in and put in there at the beginning, it's not going to be there when you go looking for it. So the measurement outputs, there's lots of different outputs you can have from surveys. There's all those design drawings, conceptual drawings, all those things that I showed you. They all have to speak to each other in some manner or mean. But what I do need you to take from today is that every measurement is subject to some uncertainty, and those uncertainties are what we need to establish if we wish to use and rely on them for the plans, the drawings, and to map with confidence. This is what we need to be conscious of when we're trying to create our digital world. What are we using to inform our digital world? What are the limitations? What can we expect to use it for reliably? So what next? Here's an example of a project that was created in Parnell Square, where all of the particular area was scanned to quite a high level of detail, and a corresponding building information model was created. And it's really quite a large project. But the thing about this is it was created from scan data. So it goes back in and it feeds into those drawings that I was talking at with the high level of detail. So when you zoom in, those details are there. And this is a really powerful model. I now need to, I'm actually terrified to do this piece because I don't know what way my computer is going to behave, but I need to share my screen with you all. Is that okay?
Yeah, we can see it. That's perfect.
Okay, so this is that model that I spoke of. So this was created from survey data, a mixture of survey data. There was scanners, total stations, and a mixture of many different types. There was underground services and utilities. There was UAV, but each and every one of these windows are to the correct sizes. The doors are in the correct places. The steps are modelled accordingly. So then, say for example, if this was to be brought into a CTCHC setting, perhaps the things that you would be able to see if you were to click on it might be some of the attribute data that is collected through the other various stages that Ali has developed through the program. Now I want to go back to my other screen, so just bear with me for one moment, please. So now essentially, yes, so the next one, so just going back to just finishing off the previous one, where the previous video comes to life. Since that model was made, reality capture and Epic Games have come together to form a merger. So it'll be interesting to see where survey and reality capture going forward, and how these spaces and places can be presented. And then more recently, ISRI, which is the parent company that produces ArcGIS, which is one of the key underpinning resources to our planning system. They've recently acquired a company by the name of Game Engine. So it would seem that there is an appetite out there in industry to merge reality with our virtual worlds and try to make them more have more of a user experience and make them more tactile, that we can interact with them. Then this is the next one here. This is another derivative, and it's more at the plan level. It goes back into the data that's right down there underneath the microscope. And this is what surveyors will turn out on a regular basis. The bottom left-hand section of this slide, which Myrna is sharing right now, is a survey of a streetscape, right? And that's a point cloud, right? But then of the same building, we have just on top of it a BIM model, right? So what I find interesting about the BIM model is we can then explode that BIM model, and potentially we can calculate the number of walls, the number of pipes, the number of the area of the roof space with just the click of a button. Now, expand that out to a village level or a town level. When you're trying to plan for different things, you know what floor space, retail space is in your town. You know what, you can query it by area and by function or by use. You know, you have really powerful information to try and help people. And the bottom slide there is an area of floor space highlighted from within that model. So you can just make use of that. It's a very powerful data set. And this is something that the CTCHC might end up one building at a time looking at. And if not, you know, it's there for possibly the public to interact with in a way. I'm pretty confident in the not too distant future, it's the way children will be looking at some of our spaces when these larger companies come together. So the next slide, please, Murray. Thank you very much, Murray. That's great. So our future is dependent on what we do today, really, right? We have our towns, our villages, and our cities, of course, and they're there with all of our assets in it, and they need to speak to each other. On the right-hand side of this image, that's back to our kind of GIS portal where everything comes together and can be queried. And that's the power of the data, when you start querying it, when you start analyzing it, when you start making connections, okay? So what the message that I want to give you is, the better the information in at the bottom, the more likely, the better the information coming out the other side, the analysis that can be run. But if we have good information in, we can also make other uses of them because we can utilize it in other ways. So what I'm saying is, we must hope for a brighter future and work for it together. Here's one of my all-time favorite quotes. John Feehan brought it to my attention many years ago, and it was as relevant then as it was when it was first said. In the end, we're only ever going to conserve what we love, and we're only ever going to love what we understand, and we will only ever understand what we're taught. We need to think about our places and our spaces. We need to think about how we're going to interact with them. We need to create a future that's going to work for all of us. We need to create one and look at what we have and try and bring it forward for the next generation. So if we can just go on to the next slide, please, Murray, if you don't mind. This one here, for me, planning is one of the most exciting areas that there is, because to be honest, I think it's full of opportunity. Each and every one of you have the ability to bring about great change. If you sit back and just look at how everything is connected. You're most likely young, tech savvy, and have grown up in the digital world. So the expectation is there that you will have access to the information that you need to make robust decisions that may be the cause of greatness or the unthinkable, of course. You know, the pace of change with which we're seeing is unprecedented. 15 years ago, there was no Google Earth or synchronized data sets to choose from in the manner that there are today. So if you can take three things from today, what I want you to take away with you is that measurement matters, and the devil is in the detail. The more detail you have, the better it is for everybody, for yourself and everybody. And then everything is connected. We need to collaborate and engage and not forget the people that reside and need to use these places and spaces. The user experience needs to be good too. Thank you for your attention. And I'm so sorry for what has happened with my presentation here today.
Oh, that's perfect. Thanks so much, Sarah. And don't worry about what happened, the joys of online communications, but it was perfect. I really enjoyed how it's like the right equipment for the right purpose, and the devil is always in the detail. I feel that's perfect for planning these days. So I'd just like, before I introduce our next speaker, I just might like to remind the attendees that if you have any questions, just the Q&A box, you can send them straight in. And then that's just how we'll view your data. So perfect. So our next speaker I'd like to introduce is Owen Costello. So Owen Costello is the digital champion for small businesses at Digital HQ. In this role, he promotes digital capability and agility in small businesses to help accelerate their growth, specifically through Digital HQ's Digital First Communities Framework. He's an expert in digital marketing, scaling, and is a former member of the Enterprise Ireland Lean panel of consultants. Owen devotes time to creating digital first communities in town centres by repurposing vacant listed buildings to help attract remote workers, home buyers, shoppers, and visitors to support sustainable economic growth. And I welcome you to listen in to Owen's presentation now. Thank you so much.
Sorry, Owen, you're just muted there.
Wherein I'm talking right to myself here. Can everyone see my screen here, putting the heart back into towns?
Yeah, we can.
Cool. Okay. So this is a rhetorical question. What's the collective noun for a cluster of small businesses? And Ali, you know this one, so don't shout it out. A town, because ultimately, when we talk about the built environment, you know, it is the collection of businesses that from the rate space that create the footfall into the town. The reason we're actually just nipping into town to get a few things. So ultimately, what I'm talking about does carry on very much what Sarah was talking about people, places, and spaces. But what I'm interested in is the actual people that are occupying and working in these places. Because we want to reinvent our town centres, that's where we have to start the conversation. So what are we? As Kieran kind of kindly outlined, we're a digital, what I call a digital growth hub, based in the heart of Dunleary town. And how we got started with this initiative was about 5 years ago. I was heading up the CEO of Startup Ireland. And I kind of felt that, well, look, what can we do to activate the communities, particularly startups and digital businesses in our town centres? So that was kind of the start of my journey. My local hometown is Dunleary town. And Dunleary faced many challenges, high occupancy rate, a kind of a sense of ennui and lethargy. You know, the Irish Times kind of saying Dunleary's continued failure to reinvent itself. And then in the online forums where you had, you're from Dunleary when with 16,000 members, a lot of the there was positives very often shared, but often, the sense that the best days of Dunleary are behind it. And that was 5 years ago, the kind of the environment that we got started with our initiative. So like Dunleary had lots of empty spaces with alternative uses. That was, sometimes that's seen as a negative. And what we're arguing is that that's actually a positive, empty space along the main street, space of banks where I'm sitting now, former court buildings, CIE buildings. And I suppose what's Digital HQ's big idea? We believe that within 10 years, 50% of vacant town centre space will be filled by co-workers and high quality co-working spaces. That's our prediction. And why do we say that? Well, we say that because our chairman is actually doing that. On the left-hand side there, you can see the building in that he bought in Dunleary town centre. It was actually at that time. Would you believe somebody's ringing the doorbell here? So in our enterprise centre, so I'm just going to plug it out. Give me a moment. What that's the practicality of running a digital growth hub. So he has taken 2 vacant retail premises in the town, and the one that he's in the photo there was Eurosaver pound shop, and he's turned that now into high quality co-working space, which has brought 100 co-workers right into the heart of our town. So it can be done. That's what we believe. But how are we going to catalyze this change on a scale that's going to reinvent our town centres across the country? And from Digital HQ's point of view, we believe the transformational power of digital is yet to be harnessed effectively by towns across Ireland. So if we convert empty space that was built for past uses, be it courthouses, be it empty banking spaces, etc., into digital, what we call digital growth hubs, in order to create the communities of the future, using the digital tools of the present, like all the tools we need to start this journey, both in the physical environment and the online environment, are already there. So we've started that in collaboration with Bank of Ireland. They gave us space that they weren't using, and we've turned it into Dunleary Enterprise Centre, and then the County Council support us. So what have we been doing on our journey since 2016? First of all, we created a plan for the digital transformation of Dunleary town, and that's on the left, that's available online. We set up the Digital Dunleary Steering Group chaired by Chad Gilmore. We've set up the Enterprise Centre with space from Bank of Ireland, and then we run these campaigns, which I'll talk a little bit more about later, for the local small business community. So if we're going to talk about how do we start reimagining our towns, like what are the factors we need to keep in mind? We need to create a fusion between the built environment and small businesses. That's essential. They're the lifeblood. They pay the rates. They keep the lights on effectively. So as Jim Power, one of our honorary patrons, says, that to create a successful town, it's necessary to create an environment where people want to work, live and socialize. And another one of our members of our advisory panel, Arno Morrison, said that connectedness and proximity to diverse and numerous amenity make urban living the best way to participate in the experience economy. And I'll come on to that. I saw Kieran Deneen's piece about, attracting the millennials back to our town centres. And then McKinsey and company, in talking about the post-pandemic reality for small business, is that companies need to understand what customers will value post-COVID-19 and change and address that. So we start and again, this is just my own view. I'm not a social historian and I'm not an expert on this area and I'm not a planner, but this is my own kind of, thoughts on how this can happen. There's a very good talk by Scott Galloway on TED, and he talks about how the multinationals, looking at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, how they address the needs of people, and how they've been so spectacularly successful and profitable from doing so. And the needs of people are often reflected, and my apologies if I'm going to this too quickly, I'll slow down slightly. Ali, I can see you there. You might kind of go slow down a bit if I'm racing through it too fast. If you look at the, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, medieval towns, people came together for the psychological needs of water, food, shelter, clothing. And then, it evolved to personal security, ringed forts, were formed for security, employment, resources. And actually sort of a location where you could sell your beetroot vegetables and your livestock. And then gradually, as we got to the post-industrial town, people came together again to access workplaces, be it factories, etc. But you also start to see, self-actualization, love and belonging. Like, the tavern started to emerge, or coffee shops like where Lloyd's of London was established started to emerge in the 17th and 18th century. And then, where we see the 21st century town as being absolutely key is we now are at a point of self-actualization in more advanced economies, where esteem, self-status, recognition, and the desire to be the best you can be it in really good work-life balance and a sense of belonging. And of course, it's different for everybody, but that's where we see towns needing to evolve to address that the kind of needs of self-actualization. And we've seen businesses in Dunleary do that. So, our local flower shop, she now has a flower school on site. So, rather than just run in, buy a bunch of flowers and head on your way, you can now book on site in her flower school, subject to social distancing, a class in flower arranging, or how to plant and grow the flowers that you love, as well as having the retail experience. J.G. Darboven, in the heart of our town, bought the premises at the front of the street there, just doing coffees. You went in, bought your coffee and maybe a chocolate or two and went on your way. Then they bought the next shop up, and then, you could actually go in and shop and buy their coffee beans and buy teas from all around the world. And then they bought the next shop up along the street. And again, they're moving up the kind of the food chain of coffee, and they now have a roasting unit at the back, where this delicious smell of roasting beans wafts across through the town. And then the final stage in self-actualization is, what if you want to train to be a barista? What if you wanted to make the perfect cup of coffee? So where that science is 1923, which is a lovely piece of history, they have a little barista academy where you can actually train how to make the perfect coffee. So that is, really Maslow's hierarchy of needs in vivo on our street. So we believe, in this whole digital first communities model, a 21st century town, needs to evolve and become a platform for local jobs. And we see that as by providing livable places and sustainable mobility. Our prediction is 50% of the high street will become co-working space. And because you've got much higher occupancy, then, the local authorities can invest more. They've got more income from rates. You don't get much rates from vacancies. And we see what's really important is locality becomes a brand then. You can actually, to use kind of an almost a dirty word, you can monetize the brand of your locality, a bit like Clonmacilty does with its black puddings, or Avoca hand weavers, with Avoca, that heritage heritage and culture then becomes one of the key ways where localities can market themselves effectively to attract remote workers and innovation-driven enterprises. And that's kind of the second kind of key part of it, where, you know, again, our enterprise center I'm sitting in here is set up to attract remote workers and innovation-driven enterprises. And then that helps the traditional local businesses. They get footfall of the high capture rate. They can then collaborate on digital marketing campaigns, which we run, and they take advantage of the loyalty to local. So again, to try and advance this tangibly, what we've been doing is we're very supportive of initiatives that kind of move forward this idea you know, a much more permeable landscape. You know, we are not Dundrum Town Centre, and a lot of people, you know, some wring their hands and say, oh my goodness, isn't it terrible, we're losing out. I'd say the opposite. You know, we have an open air opportunity to be like a fantastic niche retail town with lots of co-workers attracted to that, millennials. So we were very supportive of Dunleary's pedestrianisation Summer Streets initiative here during the summer. We see our mission then as how can we help towns to kind of repurpose unoccupied space. So, you know, again, we've with the support of Bank of Ireland shown how this can be done, taking space with few alternative uses, bringing jobs into the heart of a town. That then attracts and grows innovation-driven enterprises who do get their dry cleaning done locally, they have lunch locally, they socialize locally, and they can just jump on the back of the bike and go and collect their children from school, which is what I do. And then we also help upskill traditional business and digital through collaborative campaigns, which I'll show you now shortly. So it's interesting. What is the destination for urban towns and cities? You know, as Kieran says, do we start to evolve a kind of a journey where, you know, the city centers and urban town centers are very much designed around the needs of millennials, you know, much more opportunities for networking, to advance your careers, for socialization, etc. But then as we get families, you know, we all start to take our responsibilities more seriously. We want to be, you know, in more conducive environments where it's not all about rush. Yeah, we want to be able to cycle and drop our kids to schools and actually enjoy a better work-life balance. So, you know, rural and smaller towns are ideally supportive for that kind of life journey. So bringing it right back to what we're doing here today in Dunleary, we have our enterprise centre here, which funds the work of our business attraction under Digital Dunleary and the initiatives that we run there. And then that also supports our Love Dunleary campaigns, and we see it as a kind of a virtuous circle, which we'd like to see replicated in other towns across Ireland. We've spent 5 years working on this model. So what's different about a digital growth hub? We see it as an engine of economic growth at the heart of local communities. Like we are run by local people. We are inputted into by local people. And unlike a traditional enterprise center or a hub, you know, there's the inward focus of helping member businesses and then helping them expand into nearby co-working spaces. But then what's different about us is we're very much outward focused. Like 55 to 60% of my time goes into strengthening the local community through our Digital Dunleary steering group, promoting local businesses digitally, networking innovation-driven business into the town. Because what we know from Granovetter's density of networks research is that the more visible networks are and supports and resources, the more you're going to attract innovation-driven enterprises and business attraction. And that's under our Love Dunleary campaigns, our Digital Dunleary, and then our Why Dunleary with the Dunleary Enterprise Centre. So what that practically looks like, and this is the part of the job that I love, I get out and meet small businesses all the time. When I look out the window here, I see my parents' first shop, which I talk about in my TEDx talk about Dunleary. And that's my personal motivation. You know, I've always been involved in small businesses, working behind the counter or supporting local businesses. And that's a huge motivation for me. And every month I get to go out and meet 5 or 6 great local businesses and make them the star of our campaign. So our Love Dunleary campaigns feature, this is just 1 month's campaign of post-COVID, the kind of the body and mind focus we did that month. We then, you know, again, we're constantly trying to remind people of local options. So instead of going online and buying from a big tech multinational, you can buy from your local business, be it clothes, be it books, be it electronics. There are local options which have often, in my personal opinion, far more appeal and wider range than you're going to get online. But people sometimes forget about that. So we constantly need to remind them through our buy local campaigns. And we say buy local rather than shop local because there are B2B local service providers, be it web designers and accountants and lawyers, etc. And we want to promote those as well in our town. And then under our kind of our why Dunleary, why move to Dunleary, or why move to any local town, you've got to focus on the B2B sector. So we interview innovation-driven enterprises that are already here. We interview people who are providing services into those innovation-driven enterprises, the local enterprise office, the county council. We interview co-working space providers, and this is just 1 month's campaign. We did a feature on those 3, and that's a rolling monthly campaign. So bringing that all together into some kind of a framework, because I'm a person who loves systems, and like myself and Ali, we talk about this very often. We have to be able to do this at scale. Hand-to-hand combat is not where we're at. We don't want to help, oh, that business is helped now, brilliant, or that town's great. No, we would like to roll this out, not just nationally, but imagine if we could help other European towns leverage this framework. So we've kind of put it together into what we call digital first communities. So it's a digitally powered framework to enable people to get behind their place for its future prosperity. So back to the kind of marketing 3 Ps, people, place, and product, we have our 3 Ps in digital first community, because it's all about people. It's all about people. It's not digital. It's not technology. It's not about money. It's about people and work-life balance and getting it right for people, because people love place wherever it is. And if we can leverage that and enable that, then we can help them take control of their own destiny, take control of their own lives, and create jobs locally. How many jobs are created locally when you have initiatives like an enterprise center? And that can be for every knowledge intensive job, 1 job, you can have 5 jobs created locally in service business, etc. You've lost rental income from the remote working hub members that could be in those facilities. And then you've, most importantly for small business, you've lost footfall with a high capture rate for local business. So people spending their money rather than passing through. And we've tried to do our best. We've targeted a number of vacant buildings in Dunleary, beautiful buildings. Like this is Lawler's Hotel, built in 1830. It was a council offices and it's been vacant for about 7 or 8 years now. And at the rear of it, you can see the lovely 1915 Art Deco style Dunleary Baths, which was built in response to people not being able to wash themselves. There was no facilities here back at the turn of the last century, and they're both vacant now. And we suggest that could be a fantastic integrated facility as an enterprise campus for the county, with an atrium joining it. You've got Jude Sherry and Frank O'Connor in Cork doing superb work on highlighting the sheer scale of empty buildings across Ireland, and that instead of them being these are liabilities, these are sources of sadness and loss, I'm saying no. And I think Frank and Jude are saying these are resources that are actually, with a capital budget and a bit of imagination, can become powerhouses again of local job growth in the 21st century. And I think this is really exciting because change is happening and society is changing. And you had Minister Humphreys of our Department of Community and Rural Development launching the Connected Hubs Network. And her purpose is to send out a message that Ireland is leading the way in remote work and connected working. She had a call to communities across the country to change the narrative that you need to move to a city to get a good job by refurbishing interesting buildings as hub to create sustainable jobs for your children. And that's a huge motivation for people. And as she said herself, it's once in a generation opportunity to change for the better. Let's make it happen. And I find that personally very, very powerful and very motivating. So we've been very involved in supporting the Connected Hubs initiative. We've done some pilot training programs with members of Connected Hubs to share our whole model for digital first communities. And I believe that this is only the beginning of a real change for the better for society, very much in line with the theme of today's talk. So that's my presentation. I hope you found it interesting. Please feel free to connect to me on LinkedIn, Owen Costello. I put the K in because it's only when you go on social media you realize how ununique your name is. There's 5 or 6 other Owen Costellos out there, so I stuck in the K so people know I am not the other ones. And then secondly, if you're looking for more information on our Digital First Communities model, you just go to Digital HQ. Thanks, everybody.
That's great. Thank you so much, Owen. Very informative chat. I really enjoyed how you set up an organization that's built by people for people. And as you're saying, without people, areas are some empty hubs. Now, I'd just like to thank all our speakers now for their presentations, but I will just say now we'll be taking a 5-minute break. But during that time, if people want to load up the Q&A with questions for the second half of the webinar, you're welcome to do so. But just for the moment, we'll just be taking just a 5-minute break. I'd like to thank Ali so much for moderating the Q&A, and to all our speakers. We've had some technical issues with my throughout today, but the quality of content from our presenters, our speakers, the attendees with their questions has just made this like maybe not a perfect webinar technically, but a very engaging and enjoyable one. We hope to get the recording out to everyone who attended and everyone who registered. And if you like it, just please get in touch with the planning at uccsocieties.ie and we can forward on to you by email. And again, just a final thanks to Muireann, Gemma and Kieran and Ali, of course, and to the Heritage Council. Just thank you all for joining us today, and I hope you really enjoyed it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. See you later.
Bye-bye. Thank you.